moderator to this webinar. So, first of all, I would like to welcome Divya Kalatingal, who is the Assistant Professor of Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kerala. She has been working on Indigenous people's resource right for more than a decade. She was involved in facilitating the Forest Rights Act on 2006 implementation in the Varachal Forest Division, Kerala. She finished her MPhil at the Tata Institute of Social Science, Mumbai. That was on how the legislation have come in conflict with the life of Kadar and how the interfaces. So she is currently
Divya, your voice is breaking. Hello? Devika? Hello, Devika? Can you hear me? I think Devika is experiencing some network problems. Hello?
Okay, hello. Sorry for the interruption. It's just a technical issue. So I would like to welcome Alina to deliver the welcome speech.
Good morning. Honorable Chief Guest of the Day, Dr. Tadaus Alfonso, Mrs. Nalini Jamila, Mr. Romi Harish, the moderator of the day, Mrs. Divya Kalatingal, respected faculties and other well-wishers, and my dear friends. As we all know, today we are gathered here as part of Aloft International Webinar organized by Department of Social Work, Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi. The duty which I am bestowed today is to welcome everyone to this international webinar. On this auspicious occasion, with immense pleasure, let me cordially welcome our honorable chief guests, the panelists of the session, Dr. Tadaus Alfonso, Assistant Professor, Department of Psychology, Christ University, Bangalore. I also invite Mr. Rumi Harish, author, transgender activist, Hindustani musician, and theatre person. Let me cordially welcome Mrs. Nalini Jamila, activist, author, recipient of Kerala State Film Awards for costume designs in 2021. I'm glad to respectfully and cordially welcome the moderator of the session, Mrs. Divya Kalatingal. Next, let me welcome the head of our department, Dr. Jose Anthony, and all other faculties of Social Work Department who have constantly extended their support for the Aloft webinar. Now, I would like to welcome all the faculties and social workers from various universities and colleges in this webinar. Lastly and importantly, let me welcome all the social work trainees and students participating in this webinar from different parts of the world. I request all your kind cooperation throughout the program and make it a grand success. Once again, I wish a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you.
Divya,
I hope I can start.
yes, yeah, please.
Yeah, so a very good morning to all. I welcome you all to the third day of the international webinar Aloft, organized by the Department of Social Work, Sri Shankara University of Sanskrit. Today, we are moving on to the third day of the webinar, Dislocations and Fragmented Identities. For the last 2 days, we have been discussing on different aspects of the same topic. And today, we are also going to start on our first session on politics of identity, gender, and sexuality. To have this deliberation, we have three prominent speakers. One is Tadaus Alfonso, and second is Nalini Jamila, and third is Rumi. And I hope we'll start with Tadaus Alfonso. Before we start, let me give a small introduction about the speaker. Dr. Tadaus Alfonso is a faculty at the Christ University, Bangalore. He is a mental health professional with 18 years of experience in teaching, research, practice, and consulting. As a faculty, he teaches mental health and well-being, diversity and inclusion management, organizational behavior, human resource development, counseling and psychotherapy, and research methods. He has rich experience in consulting UNICEF, Tamil Nadu AIDS Initiative, by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, European Union, a National Institute for Research in Tuberculosis, Public Health Foundation of India, AIDS Prevention and Control by USAID, Chai and Sati. He is also a mentor of the Structured Operational Research and Training Initiative of the World Health Organization. He formerly worked with the Don Bosco Institute of Psychological Services, Government Stanley Medical Hospital, College Hospital, HCL, Institute of Neurological Sciences and TCS. He is on the advisory board of a couple of not-for-profit organizations, a member of the Ethics Committee and Board of Studies in Higher Education Institutions. He is a founding member of the International Institute of Psychotherapy, Academy for Public Health and Well Work. So we welcome you, sir, to the session. And without much delay, I invite Dr. Tadaus Alfonso to start with the session.
Thank you very much, Divya. I hope I'm audible. Thank you so much for the introduction. And thank you, Dr. Reshma and Dr. Anish, all of them, for roping me into this session. So nevertheless, yeah, thank you so much. After a long time, I'm getting to see Dr. Reshma as well. Yeah, so without much delay, I will start with this talk. And I think I will start from the word aloft. So I don't know whose brain was behind, but it is so appropriate that, that it is just over the head when we talk about the politics of gender and sexuality. Whichever nation that we belong to, I think it's almost the same, especially in India over the decades. So put the context in place, I would probably to start with, so we are living in an age where sex, gender, and sexualities can no longer be presumed to be non-political here. So the pre-political or even marginal, we cannot say it, because political activity and activism around the sexual politics have really pervaded and transformed the political agenda in nations across the globe. Even if you take the global north or if you take the global south. So as a consequence, these developments have given rise to a lot of changes in all areas of political life, from the electoral politics in some of the states that we know, that we are aware of, especially in South India, and the local government to public policy and international relations. So we need to now, on the verge of recognizing sexuality as a mainstream, gender and sexuality as a mainstream concept in political analysis. And we probably to explore issues in the politics of gender and sexuality that are highly salient and controversial at times today. Okay, so when these, we need to understand in the concept of citizenship or nationality that are linked to the gender and sexuality. Apart from that, they are also linked to the legislation about the age of consent that that person gives, right? So to do anything for that matter in each country here, especially in India. And as an introduction, that one of the organizers have talked about the prostitution and trafficking in women. So the international politics of this population control and the abortion and the sexual harassment and sexuality across all walks, including the military or outside, anywhere for that matter. So all these are going to be relevant for us to really look into and discuss. So we need to understand that the sexuality, gender and sexuality, it has a high impact on the politics. So they determine and construct the identities of citizens in India and across geos. Correct? So the literature of political science or whatever it could be, or the sociological science or the social work, it's all talking about very interestingly to about explore the political and intellectual changes that is associated with the kind of emergence of sexuality and gender and sexuality as a political issue. So giving that in mind, keeping that in mind, I think we need to really understand how it is being played on a day-to-day basis for us in the lives of the people, those who are being identified or whichever identity they have. It could be a gender identity or it could be a sexual identity or whatever way that is they are being identified by, they identify self and identified by somebody else within the political system. So how it is going to really impact the lives of these people are going to have much more say. And I am looking forward to be in the panel, and thank you for inviting me to be in the panel. And I am looking forward to learn from all other panelists and all people, those who are participants, those who are in this, those who are the participants here as well. I'm looking forward to have a meaningful session. And I think with this, I end here and set the ball rolling. Just to go ahead. Thank you.
So shall we move on to the next speaker?
Or should we I think Dr. Tadaus is has to leave after 1 hour. So should we take questions now for the, if there is any questions towards him, should we take it now rather than wait till the end?
I'll be happy to have the questions now, Dr. Reshma. Thank you.
Yeah,
Any
then we may
questions?
open the floor for discussion.
And then we, right.
So the participants are, hello. Hello. Yeah, participants can either message their questions or they can unmute themselves and ask.
And Dr. Tadaus, you
Yes.
were speaking about how your gender and sexuality is very crucial or integral to your rights or your identity as a citizen or even belonging to a nation, nationality. So can you please elaborate a bit more on that?
Okay. So I think, as you're aware, what I understood is that you want me to elaborate on the citizenship and the sexuality. So as I understand, and as most of you are aware that the most of the discourses that has happened over the years, over the decades, across nations, including India, among all our academicians as well as practitioners, probably what has happened was like all that gender, that aspects of public life that you have denoted to, the gender discussions, especially connected with the feminist issues, correct? So for a longer time, we have been really discussing that. Even if you take my PhD, topic that even Dr. Reshma probably recall, the interview that I've really taken, even the in-depth interview that she has agreed to give me while I was a student for PhD program. So yeah, so most of the published article that I was even talking about is that from my own experience of meeting faculties across nations, The most of the gender discourses have limited to the understanding of the politics that dealt with the feminism. So probably it is issues such as the uneven distribution of opportunities, probably the representative offices, so unequal treatment of women, for example. All that is really comprised the, or probably concealed a lot more other issues that are up there. So even out of the empirical evidences that we have, through the research studies that we have across global north or the global south, if you take, I think we have quite a bit of evidence to talk about how the gender has only encompassed to the umbrella of like under the umbrella of feminism across nations, where it is overlooked even the upgrading of the women in the management positions or higher management, top management positions. They are limiting if they are not able to even see the value for that. So we are talking about the 33 percentage, what the politics is talking about, the representation of women based on the gender, and a whole lot of things based on the sexuality as being not determined as the gender was giving the importance of the feminism was. It is good that we have really looked into the feminism over the years, but at the same time, the sexual orientations have really taken a backseat, though we have, fragmented discourses, especially just the prelude to the gay pride or the LGBTQ or the queer pride across the nations that we conduct. Apart from that, certain states have taken initiative, especially all of us know that South Tamil Nadu was a forerunner for transgender people to creating the welfare board, and the Kerala followed the suit, right? And I think some of you were a part of those discussions when it happened in Calicut. So when you developed the transgender. So if you look into that, what kind of a politics that is being played for the citizens based on the gender and the sexuality? Is it like just before the election that you declare something very sweet and rosy and pink, wrap it as a package and give to the people and talk about the gender and sexuality? Is it an electoral agenda that they are trying to really incorporate, or they want to take it as the real issues of this nation and to discourse it and do something about it throughout the year, through the kind of the year? Or you want to limit only during the time of election, just before the election, you want to package it as an electoral module. So I think that is where the concerns are. So the citizens that they are talking about, I think we have a lot more things to look into when it comes to gender and sexuality. And as citizens of this country, I think we have a long way to go. Though there are positive impacts that have happened over the period of time. I think activists, those who are in the panel, there are eminent people, those who have been working on certain areas, and all the faculties here, whomever I know and whomever I may not know, I think all of us have been contributing one way or the other through our writing, academic writing, or through our social activism, and through raising our voice against. So the situation is better. Nevertheless, according to me, I would say that long way to go when it comes to the rights of the citizens related with gender and sexuality. I think that could take a different shape. It has to take a different shape altogether for all of us to really, get that kind of to become part of that tapestry, the complete tapestry. To become part of that, I think it would call for a lot more effects at the policy level and at the system level. So that is my perspective is all about, Dr. Reshma. I'll be happy to take any other questions. And please give your perspectives as well, which I would have missed. Please feel free to add on to it.
Like if any of the participants wants to ask question in Malayalam, please do so. Because I will be happy to translate it. And I think Dr. Tadaus also has a rudimentary knowledge of Malayalam, but even otherwise I can translate it, or Divya can. So that's not a problem. Uh, so please do ask questions, or you can also write it in the chat box. But if nobody is asking question, I actually have one more question to ask. Can I? Because we in Kerala,
Please.
we are having this recent suicides of transgender people, and some of them who have undergone gender reaffirmation surgery, and like we were doing fact finding around the suicide of Ananya, one of the trans persons in Kerala, and we were interviewing many people who have undergone the reaffirmation process, and mostly in Kerala nowadays the reaffirmation process is limited to the surgical intervention alone, and hospitals are violating the WPAC guidelines on the role of the psychiatrist, psychologist, or psychiatric social workers in this whole process. And so, like, one question that the trans persons in Kerala is raising, like, we already knew about our, gender desires around gender. So, why should we actually go through a long process of, consulting with the psychiatrist or getting help with the psychologist or psychiatrist? And so, like how can, as a psychotherapist, you yourself is one, and you also you have you're trying to develop a cure, understanding of psychotherapy and support mechanism. So, how would you answer this?
It's a very relevant and wonderful question. I think it has a lot of social values, and I think as a mental health professional as well, I would say we have to respect the rights of transgender people. There is no doubt about it, correct? And as a South Indians, either Kerala or Tamil Nadu, we are the forerunners for doing anything when it comes to transgender people. But nevertheless, we are not saying that we are having the perfect system to address all their issues, correct? So we admit to that as well, because we want to say that there is a room for growth, development, and the discourse can happen, and we will eventually develop a robust system that would take care of even the mental health needs and the SRS, sex reassignment surgeries, right? SRIs, that would take care. But when it comes to mental health, when an individual experiences, with my experience of working with the transgender people over almost 18 years now after my postgrad, even during my postgrad itself, 18 years of working with the LGBT community, as some of you know that my involvement with the LGBT community, not only as part of the HIV intervention, behavioral intervention program, but also as an activist to help them in whichever way possible that we have been doing the discourses. So my experience of working with the community or working with, even as a therapist, mental professional with the general population, those who are not really categorized as, that as the queer population or whatever it may be. They call themselves a general population. Whichever the term, the label they attach to. My experience is that when it comes to taking a decision on something which is very life-changing, they know that we respect their understanding, but we want to know that whether it is something very shallow, very superficial, or whether there is some kind of, dilemma that they are experiencing now, or which is more psychologically bound, which is more in the conscious and in the subconscious and the unconscious, so that they do not regret later after doing something. Correct? So for that, it is always good that they get assessed by a psychiatrist or a psychologist so that they are safe, their mental health is taken care, correct, eventually. So when I feel that, many of them that we would have come across, probably they have some gender dysphoria, may not be, they want to really have a gender reassignment surgery. Probably they want to live with that and be the way they are, correct? But they have some doubts and clarifications probably, which they need not to be aware. So mental health is all about sometimes, we may not be aware what is in the subconscious for us. So what is in the, ego level, the deeper level of the ego that I want to be or want to become, how it is. So is it to exclude any biological predisposition or psychological predisposition or the social predispositions which may influence their decision to go for a session. So there is nothing wrong to go to a mental health professional, I would say, because you are going to really make things work for you, not for anybody, correct? So because you've taken a decision to do that, we cannot really hurry things because that may really not really help you in the long run. So once you go through this process, probably sitting with, so why did we have anything about pre-counseling, pre-test counseling or post-test counseling in the HIV programs, correct? They can just go get the test done and go back, right? Why? We want to prepare them for the eventualities in life, right? So actually, this process is going to really help them to understand what kind of eventualities they may face if they go through this, and what are the ways that they could equip or develop or enhance their coping skills so that whatever the life events which are going to come post to the surgery, they're equipped to deal with that and face them. I think all of us probably may go to professionals to get some help when we are stressed to cope with it, right? The same way. And it is a life decision. It is something very important in their life. It's a different phase they are going to embrace after through the surgery, right? They're going to embrace a different phase in life. So that is why I think it is all the more important to incorporate mental health as part of any health for that matter. I think we shouldn't really, dissect mental health out of health. Health means there is no health without mental health. So even if it is a physical surgery, it is health, and mental health is part and parcel of that. I think we all should come to that kind of an understanding. So that will make us, that perception, that outlook will make things easy for all of us, right? I hope I have answered.
I think maybe the problem is that the trans community does not totally trust the mental health professionals in Kerala, and rightly so, because like their experience with the mental health professionals have not always been very good, to tell the truth. So like the focus should be upon the mental health professionals getting more trained in a cure friendly psychiatric
you nailed it,
knowledge
Dr.
and
Reshma.
sensitive towards the requirements of the trans people in general, in specific, and cure people, or people who are not conforming to the gender binary system. So we need to have professionals who are much more sensitive as well as knowledgeable about these issues, and then maybe we can think that this kind of trust will happen between the people from the margins and the psych professionals.
I think that will go a long way, as you rightly said, Dr. Reshma. I think if they are getting trained in the queer-friendly, mental health interventions and how they have to go about it, if basically they are trained, I think it will go a long way. And there are queer-friendly mental health professionals, well-trained across nations, are also available. Probably we need to really empanel them into the system at least, and we can provide others, the government, deputed, destined or designated mental health professionals. Probably they can go through these modules, training modules developed by people like all of you. So I think all of us, I think that will go a long way, as you said. That I completely agree with those perspectives. I think that is important as well to deal with them, right? And one more thing I wanted to say, one psychiatrist giving a letter is not enough, because they should take it from two mental health professionals, at least two psychiatrists. Yeah, so that is also another thing they have to keep in mind. Two opinions are important from two mental health professionals. So one can really probably go wrong. If one may go wrong, other can really pitch in. So two reports are important for them before SRS. If I am correct till now, I'm not sure whether they've changed any policy in 2020. Until 2021, I think it has been the same. Thank you. Any other question?
I think there is a response from Romi Harish in the chat box. Yeah.
Can I say it?
Is it audible?
Am I audible?
Yes, Rumi. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to respond to Professor saying one thing that maybe the idea of
Good
looking
morning.
at good morning. Maybe the idea of looking at gender dysphoria should, just reverse itself. Um, it feels immensely painful that an outside system is trying to affirm our genders. When I know what my gender is, when I want to live my gender. Now, this still comes from a very heteropatriarchal background where there is respect for the binary. So, until the binary is broken, and reversed and then seen, it's okay for people to go reverse themselves whenever they want to. What is wrong in it? If somebody has felt suddenly and they want to change and tomorrow they want to rechange again, so what is wrong? It is our bodies, we will decide our lives. Why is this binary deciding and trying to say that we will tell you, we will guide you, you need 2 certificates, you need 3 certificates? And see, the law, the mental health and the systems around is so binary gendered that they are not ready to break this binary and to look at one person who actually feels the dysphoria. Even the word dysphoria, which says the word, that it also is actually, it has to be reversed. I feel like for me, it took 48 years of my life for me to take a decision to do the gender affirmative surgery. Now, had this society not been binary gendered, I could have happily done at a young age where I could have lived more happily. 48 years of my life is gone. Who's going to answer? It is this binary gendered society which has killed my life. And why should I depend on psychiatrists or I understand the need, but the system should be gender affirmative. It cannot be gender sensitive, or it cannot be where two cis hetero people are sitting and trying to tell us, please rethink. I completely disagree with it, and I think we should relook and break the binary. Only then we'll be able to crack this binary gendered hegemony which decides transgender people's gender. Thank you. I'm sorry if I'm rude.
Not at all. I think that adds a lot of value because the discourse is all about, the panel is all about, I think we need to really have a discourse very freely and openly, the liberty to have it. So I agree with you. The labeling itself is a problem. GID, gender dysphoria, GD is all about the problem, and all the mental health professionals do not agree, including me, with the label itself. That I completely understand, and I agree with you as well. So, and another thing is that, as you rightly said, it is important that we go beyond the binary, correct, gender predispositions of the talk that we are doing. That goes a long way. So the fight we have been having is all about, even as the researcher or as an activist or as an ally for these people, what we have been discussing also across nation is all about how do we really break this ceiling, right? The ceiling of the binary. That is one thing we all agree, and I think that is very important, as you have pointed out. But nevertheless, why you need to go to the psychiatrist and two reports, all that is a system issue. That also we have to look into that. How we have to enable the system to facilitate the process for people, correct? It should not be a jeopardy that they experience in the process. It should really enable the process so that the systems have to really do the ways that it could enable the process, then really become the barriers to their processes, right? Impede the processes. So I think that is also, I think, one way of having a discussion where we can put it our thoughts together, and whichever way we could really influence the policies within the system, that would also go a long way. But having said that, however, we need to also understand that the person who's going through this kind of it, of course, the adult is really expressing. As an adult, the person is expressing that I have this one I want to change. Well and good, they have the right. So only that if they can have a consultation, not a long consultations where they have to wait for 3 to 6 months now and two psychiatrists, if the system facilitates, if it is going to facilitate the process, I think that would go a long way, as you have mentioned. I think let us look into how we could really enable the system to help people. I think that, yeah. So in addition to whatever you said, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir. I have a small question that you are uh, you are taking like a workshop and training to all over the India related to the gender and sexuality. So, what are the difference you are experienced from one state to other, especially from Kerala and Tamil Nadu, regarding the attitudinal, cultural, and difference towards the LGBTIQ community?
So to answer Dr. Anish, I think there are eminent people here as well. But based on my experience of working with this community people across nations, the one thing is that I think it has a lot more factors to discuss. It is not like one cause is really, producing certain kind of an effect. So if you look into the literacy, if you look into the political discourses, the political scenario in South, it has been very, very different. So starting from literacy, starting from the political scenarios, the movements, whatever movements Kerala had, the communist movements or whatever movements, I think all of you could add to it. And whatever movements the Tamil Nadu had, like Dravidian movement, AVR Periyar movement, all that, it's all talking about how much we could become inclusive, correct? Not an exclusive community. How much we could become, they embrace the diversity and, celebrate the diversity and embrace the inclusivity. It's all about that. So there is a vivid difference between how the South is embracing people of the queer community and what they're trying to do. Is there is some vivid difference between the North and South or the East and the West or whatever. I think the factors that may enable here is, if you look at the history of the political social movements, everything, I think that would have really given an advantage for the South to really go a little ahead of time than probably, I'm not biasing, please don't get me wrong, that I'm not putting down any part of this nation or the country. It is that it may take a little more time for certain areas to improve in certain states. In a nutshell, maybe because of these advantages that we have, the kind of literacy for centuries now ahead of time, and the kind of political discourses and the social movements, whatever happened in the South, probably that has given some advantage to the South to really look into all these issues based on the human rights perspective more than anything else. So that inclusion has happened eventually. And I think thanks to all of you, whichever way, all the activists and the academicians and the professionals, those who have been contributing to it in the South, to have these discourses and policy changes. So that way, I think it is a little more, but I'm not saying that, it is already reached a saturation phase where you have nothing more to improve. No, there are a lot more things to improve as well, even in the South. So that is what my experience is, going around and doing the research or doing programs or providing interventions, peer interventions. That's what I would say, that there is vivid difference, but nevertheless, there are a lot more changes in the North as well. And South also is heading towards, making it much more inclusive and policy-wise as well. I think probably the gap will narrow eventually. I hope so. Let us hope for the best. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tadaus, for your thoughts on
it.
Yeah, so we really have to move on to the next speakers. I request
thank you.
I request the participants to keep your questions for the next session also.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. And I have to go for another meeting now. If you all don't mind, please let me exit. Yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah.
all. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for
Enjoy.
accepting our invitation. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Let's move on with our discussion. So let's go to a second speaker. I invite Romi Harish. So Romi Harish is an activist, a writer and musician, and a key personality in the Indian queer movement. He was associated with many organizations like Sangama, Lesbit, Alternative Lawyers Forum, did research in areas like transgender identity, discrimination, etc., and also published and written constantly on these issues. He's an internationally renowned Hindustani musician and theater person also. I invite Rumi Harish to talk.
Hello everyone, thanks for giving me this opportunity. Should I speak in English or Malayalam?
Maybe you can mix both.
English.
Okay, fine. Okay, I'll begin with my friend's way of introduction. I worked for 3 years with a transgender activist called Famila, who lived in Bangalore and had a very sad end. But she used to introduce herself as, "My name is Famila. I'm a bisexual hijra sex worker." That's what she used to say. So, in a span of the last 20 years that I'm involved in sexuality and gender politics, I have realized and still working and thinking along like how we initially worked with sexuality and gender politics based on a very cis heteropatriarchal model where we only thought of including but were not ready, and even now not ready to change the systems, as in the gender systems. So we still say there are two genders, but since transgenders are there around, we will include them. Within the binary gender system, we are trying to adjust and include transgenders. Uh, Academics or otherwise, academics or activism, either way, we're still into thinking into a adjustment process, accepting process, a process where we are, of course, 20 years of activism, and we are now beginning to say accept, adjust, include, respect, with dignity, etc., etc. But we're not ready to change our convenient binary gender heteropatriarchal systems. So the moment it is gender, it is binary, it's still around the same system. Secondly, when it comes to sexuality, sexuality does not necessarily only think about sexual orientation. It includes, like in the beginning, some people said, it includes everything around sex, and it means it includes sex work, it includes sexual desire, orientation, but still, it is still understood in the context of orientation. And we always talk about two kinds of orientation, one which is heterosexist, and the other which is not heterosexist. So we talk about diversity, we kind of want to look into having diversity, but we don't want to change the base foundation systems. That's where the whole problem arises, I feel. Personally, in my journey of being trans person and a queer person also, I faced this. Also, I'd like to include, and I'd like to say that to a large extent, the HIV funding agencies also almost decided the identities of transgender people. like the discourse which came up during the 2002 to 2010 or 11, they started using MSM, men who have sex with men, while the upper class gay people excluded themselves from MSM. What brought this word was because they could not understand what is a kothi or what is a feminine male assigned person, or who is a feminine male assigned person who is a queer or homosexual. So these funding agencies kind of they made different categories for them to identify people so that they can do the HIV work. Now that itself was very problematic because this kind of categorizing and this kind of identifying people who are non-heteronormative, non-patriarchal or non-cis comes from a very cis approach, comes from a very heterosexist approach. So we continue to have problems when such things are thrown at us. Similarly, like how feminists also had issues with sex work, and when sex workers started asserting the responses of feminists and women's movement people, so even the movement somewhere adopted the binary gendered social systems, social political systems. That's where we start having serious issues. But then at the same time, when the sexuality politics started growing and started asserting the queer politics and the trans feminist politics, that's when we really had to rethink. But then it is not also reaching to many people or many systems. Like I'd like to give an example. The thing is that for so in Karnataka government, when we went to the chief secretary to talk about the survey that they wanted to do for trans community people, the only thing that the government could understand was the Mangalamukhis, as in hijras, trans women. Here in Karnataka, they have started using the word called Mangalamukhis for themselves. But we had to we took almost 2 hours to explain the various identities, various gender expressions for the chief secretary to understand the subtleties of feminine male assigned people who are not who have not done surgery, feminine male assigned people who are in pant shirts, feminine male assigned people who shift between dresses, feminine male assigned people who are forced to live a male life, and of course female assigned transgender expressions is something that the government will never get. Now why this is happening is because the government, like I said, is now saying, okay, we accept, but we will give you a little space. We will accept, we'll include you, we'll give you this much, we'll look into the numbers. But the question is, how will you look into numbers where people are not in a position to express their gender in a very heterosexist one second in a very heteronormative, patriarchal, bigendered society? How can you express yourself? So many people who do not get chances to express their gender or sexuality, many people who one second, just many people many people who are forced by the heterosexual marriages that they have to undergo through a certain time, and many people who have no idea at all to think, because you're surrounded by a binary gendered social system to the extent that you cannot think that, oh, I'm feeling different, I can feel different. So in this kind of a context, to talk about numbers and to say these are the identities, these are the trans identities, these are the sexuality identities becomes extremely difficult. And then the next step is to understand the marginalizations within. For example, the moment you talk about gender, sexuality, everything becomes about sexuality identity issues. um, while we do have trans people who are from Dalit caste, trans people who are Dalit caste and disabled, trans people who are from Dalit caste, disabled, and from rural areas. So such marginalizations does not come into consideration at all. So at in this context, if we want to break in this kind of multiple marginalizations and try to understand identities, it becomes extremely difficult without, if you don't break the binary gendered social systems. That is one thing that I really wanted to stress and say. And then I also want to include one last thing. uh, On the other hand, yeah, I really wanted to tell you that one is that while we do talk about gender politics, when you talk about sexuality politics, what is it that we are trying to think is a question. Now, sexuality politics, which talks about assertive sex, as in asserting to have sex or to assert about our sexual desire, the moment you do that, your entire world topples, because you are breaking the present system. And when you break the present system, nobody likes it. People get very scared about breaking the present system, because the present system is convenient, is made convenient for a certain kind of people. Like the it is made convenient by making it heteronormative, by making it cis supremacy, by making it by making it where caste supremacy is there, by making it with affluent people's lives. So when you try to break the system, nobody likes it. I'll end here and I invite questions. I don't know if I've conveyed everything that is important. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So can we move on to the next speaker then, and we'll have the questions together? Is that fine with you?
Rumi, is that okay with you? Like we will
With
finish
me?
by
Yeah, fine, sure. I'd like to listen to Nalini.
Okay, yeah. So thank you. So we'll move on to the next speaker. That is Nalini Jamila. She's a writer, activist, and now a member of the film industry. Her debut book, An Autobiography of the Sex Worker, was a bestseller in the Malayalam and was translated into many Indian and foreign languages. Another book, The Romantic Encounters of a Sex Worker, won South Asian Gladly Award by the UN Population First Project for nonfiction in 2018. She was the former president of Kerala Sex Workers Forum. She won Kerala State Film Award for the costume designer in 2021. I invite Nalini Jamila to speak.
okay. Nalini will be speaking in Malayalam, and does anyone require an English translation? If anyone among the audience require an English translation, can they please mention it in the chat box? If they require it, we will provide the English translation. Otherwise, Nalini will, Nalini, I need not interrupt Nalini speaking. I think then we won't do an English translation. I don't find anyone saying that they require an English translation. So we'll go in Malayalam.
ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് വേണ്ടൊന്നുമില്ല. എല്ലാവർക്കും നമസ്കാരം. ഞാൻ നളിനി ജമീല. ഐഡന്റിറ്റിനെ പറ്റി പറയാൻ വരുമ്പോൾ ജനിക്കുമ്പോൾ കിട്ടിയൊരു ഐഡന്റിറ്റി എൻ്റെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എല്ലാവർക്കും സ്ത്രീ പെണ്ണ് എന്നുള്ളൊരു ഐഡന്റിറ്റിയിൽ മാത്രമാണ്. അല്ലാതെ അവൾക്ക് പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ഐഡന്റിറ്റി ഒന്നും ഉണ്ടാവുന്നില്ല. പിന്നീട് എപ്പോഴെങ്കിലും അവർക്കൊരു ഐഡന്റിറ്റി വരണമെങ്കിൽ അവർ കല്യാണം കഴിക്കണം. അപ്പൊ ഒരു ഭാര്യ എന്നൊരു ഐഡന്റിറ്റി അവർക്ക് കിട്ടി. ഈ ഭാര്യ എന്നുള്ള ഐഡന്റിറ്റിയിൽ ബാക്കി അവരെ അമ്മ, ബാക്കിയുള്ള വല്ല കുടുംബിരിയ, ബാക്കി കുറെ കാര്യങ്ങൾ അവർ ചെയ്യുന്ന ജോലികളെ പറ്റിയിട്ട് യാതൊരു ഐഡിയയും ആർക്കുണ്ടാവില്ല. സ്ത്രീയിൽ നിന്ന് ഭാര്യയിലേക്ക് പോയി, അത്രയും തീർന്നു. അവിടുന്ന് കുറേയും കൂടെ മുന്നോട്ട് പോകുമ്പോൾ ഇപ്പോൾ എൻ്റെ ഒരു ഐഡന്റിറ്റി എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ ഞാൻ ഒരു സെക്സ് വർക്കറാണെന്ന് പറയാനാണ് ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നത്. ആ ഐഡന്റിറ്റിയാണ് ഞാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നത്. പക്ഷെ ഞാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്ന ഐഡന്റിറ്റി അല്ല എനിക്ക് കിട്ടുന്നത്. സമൂഹം കൽപ്പിച്ച് നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു ഐഡന്റിറ്റി ഉണ്ട്, വേശ്യ. അപ്പൊ വേശ്യ എന്നുള്ള പദം നല്ല പദമാണെങ്കിലും അത് മറ്റുള്ളവർക്ക് കൽപ്പിച്ച് തരുന്നതായതുകൊണ്ട് എനിക്ക് അതിനോട് താല്പര്യമില്ല. അപ്പൊ ആ താല്പര്യം ഇല്ലാത്തതുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ വേശ്യ എന്നുള്ള പദത്തിനോട് ഞാൻ യോജിക്കുന്നില്ല എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഇതേ തരാനുള്ളൂ. പിന്നെ ഈ വേശ്യ എന്നുള്ള പദത്തിനോട് അനുബന്ധമായിട്ട് കുറെ ചീത്തവാക്കുകൾ. ചീത്തവാക്ക് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നത് ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞാൽ ചീത്തവാക്കുകളില്ല. തെറി എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുന്നത് ഇല്ല എന്ന് വിശ്വസിക്കുന്നു. നമ്മുടെ ശരീരത്തിന്റെ ചില ഭാഗങ്ങളും ചില പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങളെയാണ് തെറിയായിട്ട് കാണുന്നത്. അപ്പൊ തെറിയില്ല എന്ന് ഞാൻ വിശ്വസിക്കുന്നു. അങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഒരു ഇതിൽ മുന്നോട്ട് പോകുമ്പോൾ സമൂഹത്തിന് ഒരു വലിയ പ്രശ്നമുള്ളത്, നേരത്തെ ഇപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ ഡോക്ടർ സാർ പറഞ്ഞു, ഒരു ഇത് തെരഞ്ഞെടുപ്പ് വരുമ്പോൾ പല ഇത്തരം ഐഡന്റിറ്റികളെ പറ്റി ചർച്ച വരുന്നുണ്ടെന്ന്. പക്ഷെ തെരഞ്ഞെടുപ്പ് വരുമ്പോൾ പോലും ഒരു സെക്സ് വർക്കർ ഇവിടെ ഉണ്ട്, ഇത്രയധികം സെക്സ് വർക്കർ ഉണ്ട്, അവർക്ക് വോട്ടവകാശങ്ങളുള്ളവരും ഇല്ലാത്തവരും ഉണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ ഈ വോട്ട് കിട്ടാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ടെങ്കിലും ഒരു സെക്സ് വർക്കർക്ക് അടുത്ത് അപ്പോഴും ഒരു അന്വേഷണം ഉണ്ടാവണില്ല സമൂഹത്തിൽ നിന്ന്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എന്താ പറയുക, നമ്മുടെ രാഷ്ട്രീയത്തിൽ നിന്ന്, മറ്റേ പാർട്ടികളിൽ നിന്ന് ഒരു ഇതുണ്ടാവുന്നില്ല. അപ്പൊ ഞങ്ങള് എന്താ പറയാ, മുഖമില്ലാത്ത മനുഷ്യര് മാത്രമല്ല, യാതൊരു തരം ഐഡന്റിറ്റി ഇല്ലാത്ത മനുഷ്യരായിട്ടാണ് ഈ ലോകത്തിൽ ജീവിച്ചു പോകുന്നത്. ആ ജീവിച്ചു പോകുന്ന ഒരു സമരം ചെയ്ത് പലതും നേടിയെന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ സമരം ചെയ്തിട്ട് കാര്യമായിട്ടൊന്നും നേടിയിട്ടില്ല എന്ന് തന്നെയാണ് എൻ്റെ ഒരു അഭിപ്രായം. ആ ഒരു സമരം ചെയ്ത് നേടിയിട്ട് ഞാൻ എല്ലാവരുടെ മുന്നിലും ഞാൻ ലൈംഗിക തൊഴിലാളി എന്നൊരു ഐഡന്റിറ്റി കൊണ്ടുവന്നിട്ടൊരു പുസ്തകം എഴുതി, അത് ലക്ഷക്കണക്കിന് ആൾക്കാർ വായിച്ചു, 4-5 ഭാഷയിലേക്ക് തർജ്ജമ ചെയ്തു. ഇത്രയൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടാവുമ്പോഴും അവർ പിന്നെ കൂട്ടിച്ചേർക്കാൻ ശ്രമിക്കുന്നത് ഇങ്ങനെയാണ്. ഒരു വേശ്യയായ എഴുത്തുകാരി, ഒരു വേശ്യയായ സാമൂഹ്യ പ്രവർത്തക, അങ്ങനെ ഓരോത്തരം പ്രവർത്തനത്തിനും ഈ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ ഒരു മരുന്ന് പോലെ, ഒരു ഇഞ്ചക്ഷൻ തരുന്ന പോലെ ഒരു വേശ്യ എന്നുള്ള പദം തന്നുകൊണ്ടേയിരിക്കും അവർ. അത് നിർത്താനേ സമ്മതിക്കില്ല. ഇതിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഉദാഹരണമായിട്ട് പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ, ഞാനൊരു കോളേജിൽ സംസാരിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി പോയിരുന്നു ജെൻഡറിനെ പറ്റി. അവിടെ വെച്ചിട്ട് ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ എല്ലാത്തരം ഐഡന്റിറ്റികൾ പറഞ്ഞു. പക്ഷെ സമൂഹത്തിൽ നിന്ന് വന്നൊരു ചോദ്യം, ചോദിച്ചതൊരു കുട്ടിയാണെങ്കിൽ അത് സമൂഹത്തിൽ നിന്ന് വന്നൊരു ചോദ്യമാണ്. ആ ചോദ്യം എങ്ങനെയായിരുന്നു, നിങ്ങൾ എല്ലാ വിധത്തിലും നിങ്ങൾ ഐഡന്റിറ്റി പരിചയപ്പെടുത്തിയപ്പോൾ നിങ്ങളൊരു വേശ്യയായിരുന്നു എന്നുള്ള ഐഡന്റിറ്റി നിങ്ങളിവിടെ പറഞ്ഞില്ല, അത് നിങ്ങൾ ഐഡന്റിറ്റി അവിടെ പരിചയപ്പെടുത്തിയില്ല എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. അപ്പൊ എൻ്റെ ഒരു കാഴ്ച എങ്ങനെയായിരുന്നു, ഞാൻ വേശ്യ എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ ഞാനിപ്പോൾ വേശ്യയല്ല, ഞാൻ ആ തൊഴിൽ നിർത്തി. അതായത് പെൻഷൻ, പ്രായം കഴിഞ്ഞു, പെൻഷൻ വാങ്ങേണ്ട സമയമായി. പെൻഷൻ കിട്ടുന്നില്ല, പക്ഷെ സമയമുണ്ടല്ലോ. 55 വയസ്സിൽ എല്ലാ മനുഷ്യർക്കും, ജോലി എടുക്കുന്നവർക്ക് പെൻഷൻ കിട്ടുന്നൊരു പ്രായം. അപ്പൊ ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു, ഞാൻ എക്സ് വേശ്യ എന്ന് പറയേണ്ടി വരും. പക്ഷെ എക്സ് വേശ്യക്ക് ഒരു എക്സ് മന്ത്രി എന്ന് പറയുന്ന അത്ര പദവിയൊന്നും ഇല്ലല്ലോ, അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് പറയാതിരുന്നതെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞപ്പോഴാണ് ആൾക്കാർ അങ്ങനെ ചിന്തിക്കാൻ തുടങ്ങി. ഈ വേശ്യ എന്നുള്ള പദം ഇനി ജീവിതകാലം മുഴുവനും, ഞാൻ മരിച്ചു പോയാൽ എൻ്റെ മക്കൾക്ക്, അതുകൊണ്ട് എൻ്റെ മക്കൾ പ്രത്യക്ഷത്തിൽ എവിടെയും പ്രത്യക്ഷപ്പെടുന്നില്ല. ഞാൻ പറയാൻ വരുന്നത് എൻ്റെ മാത്രമല്ല, ഇന്ത്യൻ സമൂഹത്തിന്റെ മൊത്തം ഒരു ഇത് കിടക്കുന്നത് അങ്ങനെയാണ്. പക്ഷെ കേരളം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ തമിഴ്നാട്, കർണാടക അംഗീകരിച്ചു എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ എനിക്ക് തോന്നിയിട്ടുള്ളത്, കൊൽക്കത്ത, ബോംബെ, ആന്ധ്ര പോലെയുള്ള പല സ്ഥലങ്ങളിലും അവിടെ ഒരു പ്രത്യേക ഏരിയ ഉണ്ട്, അവിടെ അവർക്ക് വോട്ടവകാശമുണ്ട്, അവർ വോട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. ആ വോട്ടിന്റെ കാലഘട്ടത്തിലെങ്കിലും അവരൊന്ന് തിരിഞ്ഞു നോക്കാൻ ആൾക്കാരുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ കേരളത്തിലും തമിഴ്നാട്ടിലൊക്കെ തിരിഞ്ഞോട്ടം വന്നത് HIV പ്രിവെൻഷനായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടിട്ടാണ് വന്നത്. HIV ബോധവൽക്കരണം നടത്താൻ എന്താ പറയാ, തെറി പറയാൻ പറ്റിയൊരു, തെറി എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ ശരീരത്തിന്റെ ലൈംഗിക അവയവവും തെറിയാണല്ലോ, ആ തെറി പറയാൻ പറ്റിയൊരു വേശ്യകളാണെന്ന് കണ്ടെത്തുന്നു. എന്നാൽ പിന്നെ ഇവർക്കൊരു ഐഡന്റിറ്റി കൊടുക്കാന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഒരു ലൈംഗിക തൊഴിലാളി എന്നുള്ള ഒരു ഐഡന്റിറ്റി തരും. പക്ഷെ അത് അവരൊരു നല്ല വിധത്തില് ആരോഗ്യ പ്രവർത്തനം ചെയ്യുന്ന മനുഷ്യരെന്നുള്ള നിലയ്ക്കല്ല ഐഡന്റിറ്റി കിട്ടിയിട്ടുള്ളത്. ഇവര് അപകടകരമായ രോഗം വരാൻ കാരണം ഇവരാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ട് പരിഹാരം കണ്ടെത്തേണ്ടതും ഇവരാണ്. ഇത്തരം ഐഡന്റിറ്റിയാണ് കിട്ടിയിട്ടുള്ളത്. പിന്നെ മറ്റുള്ള ഏത് കമ്മ്യൂണിറ്റിയുടെ കാര്യം എടുക്കുമ്പോഴും ഇവിടെ ആദ്യം പറഞ്ഞു വെച്ച പോലെ ആണ് പെണ്ണ്, അതിനപ്പുറത്ത് മനുഷ്യന്റെ ഏതെങ്കിലും വിധത്തിലുള്ള ഐഡന്റിറ്റികളെ പരിഹരിക്കപ്പെട്ടിട്ടില്ല. ഇനി അഥവാ അതിനെപ്പറ്റി ചോദിച്ചാൽ ഒരു ട്രാൻസ്ജെൻഡറോടായാലും ലെസ്ബിയൻ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ആൾക്കാരുടെ അടുത്തായാലും ചോദിക്കുക, നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഈ സെക്സ് സാധ്യമാവുന്നു? അപ്പൊ സെക്സ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാല് അതിനൊരു പ്രത്യേക ഏരിയ ഉണ്ടെന്നും ആ ഏരിയയിൽ മാത്രം, അതായത് നമ്മൾ മൂത്രമൊഴിക്കുന്ന പോലെ തന്നെ ഒരു സാധനമേ ഉള്ളൂ. അതിൻ്റെ അപ്പുറത്തേക്ക് ശരീരത്തിന് മനസ്സില് ഇഷ്ടാനിഷ്ടങ്ങളില് ഒന്നുമില്ല എന്നിവിടെ പറഞ്ഞ് അടിച്ചേൽപ്പിക്കപ്പെട്ടു വെച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ ഇവിടുത്തെ എഴുത്തുകാർക്ക് വേണമെങ്കിൽ സാഹിത്യത്തില് പലതരം പ്രണയങ്ങൾ കൊണ്ടുവരാം, പലതരം സെക്സിനെ പറ്റി പറയാം, പലതരം ശരീരത്തിനെ പറ്റി പറയാം. അതൊക്കെ ഉദാഹരണത്തിന് ഒടിഞ്ഞു തൂങ്ങിയ മുലയിടുക്കുകൾ നിന്നും തുറിച്ചു നിൽക്കുന്ന എന്താ സെക്സ് പരമായുള്ള മുല എന്നൊക്കെ പറയാനൊക്കെ സാഹിത്യകാരന്മാർക്ക് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ കാര്യങ്ങൾക്കൊക്കെ അവകാശമുണ്ട്, എഴുത്തുകാർക്കൊക്കെ അവകാശമുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ മനുഷ്യാവകാശം, മനുഷ്യന്റെ ഐഡന്റിറ്റിന്ന് വരുമ്പോൾ ഇതൊന്നും ഒരു സ്ത്രീക്കും പറയാൻ പാടില്ല. സ്ത്രീ പറഞ്ഞാൽ പറയും സ്ത്രീ ശരീരത്തിനെ പറ്റി പറയാൻ പാടില്ല. സ്ത്രീ എന്താ പറയാ, അവളുടെ സ്വപ്നങ്ങളെ പറ്റി മാത്രമേ പറയാൻ പാടുള്ളൂ. അത് ഈ ലോകത്തിൽ സംഭവിക്കാവുന്ന സ്വപ്നങ്ങളല്ല. എന്താ പറയാ, പകൽക്കിനാവെന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞതിന് പ്രത്യേക രീതിയിൽ അത് മാത്രമേ പറയാൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ. ആ രീതിയിൽ ഒരു തരം ഐഡന്റിറ്റി ഇല്ല എന്ന് ഈ സമൂഹം പറയും. ഞങ്ങള് യുദ്ധം ചെയ്തത് കൊണ്ട് പലതരം ഐഡന്റിറ്റികളെ തിരിച്ചു പിടിക്കാൻ ശ്രമിക്കാന്ന് പറയാൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ, പറയാൻ പറ്റില്ല. അപ്പൊ ആ രീതിയിലാണ് കാര്യങ്ങൾ പോകുന്നത്. ഓക്കെ, എല്ലാവരും കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ടെന്ന് വിശ്വസിക്കുന്നു. അപ്പൊ അത്തരം ഒരു രീതിയിലുള്ള പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങളുടെ ഭാഗമായിട്ട് ഇപ്പോൾ ഞാനൊരു കേരളത്തിൽ ഞങ്ങൾ ഒരു ഗ്രൂപ്പായിട്ട് ഒരു കാര്യം ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. പ്രായം കഴിഞ്ഞ ഒരു വയസ്സായ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആരോഗ്യ പ്രശ്നമുള്ള കുറച്ച് ആൾക്കാരെ ഒരുമിച്ച് താമസിപ്പിക്കാനായിട്ട് ഒരു സ്നേഹ വീട് എന്നുള്ളൊരു പദ്ധതി തുടങ്ങിയപ്പോൾ എല്ലാവരും ചോദിക്കുന്ന ഒരു ചോദ്യം, ഇവര് സെക്സ് വർക്ക് നിർത്തിയവരാണോ? അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പ്രായം കൊണ്ടാണോ നിർത്തിയത്? പ്രായം കൊണ്ട് നിർത്തേണ്ടി വരുന്നുണ്ടോ? അപ്പൊ അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് നിങ്ങൾ സംരക്ഷിക്കുന്നത്? അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പ്രായമായവർക്ക് കുറെ ആൾക്കാരെ ഇനി പുതിയ ക്ലയന്റിനെ കണ്ടെത്താൻ വേണ്ടിയാണോ നിങ്ങൾ ഈ സ്ഥാപനം തുടങ്ങിയത്? ഈ തരം ചോദ്യങ്ങളാണ് സമൂഹത്തിൽ നിന്ന് വരുന്നത്. അപ്പൊ ഇതിന് ഉത്തരം പറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കലാണ് ഞങ്ങളൊരു പ്രവൃത്തിയായിട്ട് മാറിയിട്ടുള്ളത്. ഓക്കെ, താങ്ക് യു. ഇനി ആർക്കെങ്കിലും ചോദ്യമുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഞാൻ മറുപടി പറയാം. ഇനി അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇത് ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ തർജ്ജമ ചെയ്യേണ്ടി വരുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ കുറച്ച് കാര്യങ്ങൾ രേഷ്മ പറയുന്നു വിചാരിക്കും.
താങ്ക് യു ചേച്ചി. നമുക്ക് രണ്ടുപേരുടെയും ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് ഒന്നിച്ചെടുക്കല്ലോ. Okay. Yeah, so let's take the questions together. So we have two panelists. One is discussions.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. പറയൂ.
Yeah. Strategy for transgender social issues, EIL.
it's not clear. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, this is Dr. Sudham Rathod from Maharashtra.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Can you ask the question one more time? It's not clear. Hello. Hello.
അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ വ്യക്തമായിട്ടില്ല, ഒന്നുകൂടെ ചോദിക്കാൻ പറയാമോ?
Sir, can you ask your question? It's not clear actually. I guess you have range issues.
Yeah, my question is this.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, this is Dr. R. Sudham from Maharashtra.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
I'm saying here, can we do social advocacy for transgender? Then PIL, public interest litigation regarding social issues of transgender, LGBT, policy enabling, the system enabling. Can we do at a large?
ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് കേട്ടെന്ന് വിചാരിക്കുന്നു. അപ്പം ആരെങ്കിലും റെസ്പോണ്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ അതിനോട്. ഹലോ.
I think the question is to Rumi Harish.
Actually,
the issues of transgender. The issues of transgender. Can we have a social advocacy?
Sir, actually, we've been having this social advocacy. No,
Yeah.
exactly. We've been having this advocacy from the year 1995. To move to a legal arena and to work towards the Nalsa judgment itself, we took around 13-14 years. That is, in 2014 we got the Nalsa judgment. But the question is, policies are ready in different states. The implementation is the issue. The implementation is not yet happening in many states except for Kerala and a little in Tamil Nadu. The whole problem is about the government's delay in implementation. But even then, I'm saying that the whole policy or the Trans Act, for that matter, the act which came in 2019, is still very caught up in the binary understanding of the social systems. So transgender social issues, many people know it is very clearly brought up in the recent years, especially after 2012 and 13, because in 2011 there was a kind of campaign across the nation to start talking about the rights of transgenders, and the High Court and Supreme Court judges heard transgender people from across the country to be able to come and put a PIL in Supreme Court, which actually that PIL was put by the NALSA only, National Legal Services Authority only. So that way we have the things placed in the system, but then it is not being implemented. That's the only thing.
See, Rumi Harish, you are working for Hijra community. Hello.
I'm working for transgender community.
Hello?
Not particularly. Yes, you are audible.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, can we have we can move with the help of this district legal authority?
Sir, the thing is that there are systems in place, but it's not being implemented, whether it is district legal authority or NALSA, whatever. The implementation gets delayed because this is not of importance for the government. Of course, Kerala is a different state altogether. It gave so much of importance to transgender rights, and they did work a very nice system. But other states, it is not like that. And transgender does not mean only hijra.
Rumi, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Actually, like when you begin your talk, you were talking
Can't
about
hear
this.
you.
Hello, can you hear?
Can't.
Okay. So, like when you were in the beginning of your talk, you were talking about this the identity of MSM and how AIDS bureaucracy, not
Hmm.
just in India but across the globe, they got this sort of identity called MSM men who are having sex with men, which help them avoid the whole issue of politics of sexuality and how it has been that politics has been part of the identity. But I was also like wondering, there was this sort of for a few years at least there was this widespread acceptance uh, by many community people to this MSM identity. And many writers have also written that's because not because that they were very comfortable in this MSM identity, but because they were also uncomfortable with the identity of gay. Because like the gay identity was like plainly white, elite is sort of identity, and which always saw people from the minority bodies from the south as the whole central patriarchal have the originators of diseases as not politically active. So all the prejudices and stereotypes that is associated with like non-white, non-gender conforming patriarchal bodies were also there within this identity of gay also. So there was this question of the gay identity was not totally acceptable for the poor person, who's non-elite poor person in places like India, whereas elite poor people readily accepted this identity and politics, whereas there is this space of confusion was where MSM identity got at least partially accepted across the country. These
Yeah,
talking
I
about
mean, completely agree. It was partially accepted for some years until the male assigned feminine people started asserting that they're not men. It took some years. It definitely took some years because I remember that I think it was the NAS Foundation which started that concept of MSM, and they wanted to kind of put it squarely for especially for Panti Satla Kotis across. They wanted to put it, but then in different regions different people like Marladis asserted they were Marladis. So it took some time until they understood the concept and then started feeling that they don't fit into it, and then they came out. But initially, yes, it did give them some amount of empowerment.
Yeah, there was also one another question about the like you were talking about the how feminist movement in the in the diet.
Can't hear. It's breaking.
Okay, am I clear now? Am I audible
Ah,
enough?
yeah.
We were also talking about how feminist politics in the beginning, rejected accepting the sex workers' movements and their voices and their rights and the question of sex work and all those things. Like, but like recently we can see, let's say, some similar kind of argument arising within the trans feminist rhetoric also, like in the trans movement, especially like, when it is also connected with the ideas of dignity and self-respect and acceptance and recognition. Um, there is a sort of rejection of the trans people who are also sex workers. But I see many parallel with the discourses that happened earlier when the sex workers movement emerged, and now.
Um, yeah, completely. Which is exactly why I said that it is sexuality politics that we need to get back to, because that is where we assert sex. That is why we feel more than trans feminist movement or trans feminist understanding. Even so, there are certain contradictions we used to talk about it. So when trans women assert the uh, typical Indian woman kind of uh, image which feminists have fought for a very long time, like Nalini Chechi said that first you're a woman and then you're a wife and then you're a mother and then you apart from that, so this is the kind of image that many trans women try to assert. Now that definitely brings in a lot of dilemma within, but within the trans feminist understanding, that needs to be accepted also. But at the same time, the moment you shift into the politics of sexuality and try to understand asserting sex, that's when sex work becomes very dignified work. For us, that is how we are looking at it now. And we feel that, see, ultimately, what has happened is, in the history, it is the sex workers movement which has first initially openly accepted transgenders than in any other movements. I finished.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I think Devika wants to ask a question.
Like to know more about the LGBTQ community, which is is having that I and A plus uh, group also, which is inside that community. So I mostly don't hear where people discuss about the asexual and aromantic persons. So I would like why they are included in LGBTQ and what are the issues they feel right now and how do they identify themselves.
No, it is addressed in the LGBTQIA plus whatever movement, because one is, you have to understand two things. When it comes to sexuality issues, definitely any kind of sexuality issues are addressed in with equal respect, like asexual person or aromantic person, all those are definitely respected, and especially the issues of intersex persons are also addressed. The only thing that we need to know is everything is very different. So the collapsing of LGBTQIA plus also is a very problematic issue. When it comes to transgenders, what we are right now facing, transgenders and persons with intersex variation, what we are right now trying to address is to establish the fundamental rights, civil rights, and human rights, and assert our lives, because within the binary systems, binary gender systems, which, see, the whole system is so binary gendered that they have to break it to include a person with intersex variation or a transgender person. Now, sexuality is while I'd like to actually quote my friend Sunil, who actually says it's a very interesting thought. He says that gender is an expression more than an identity, and which is why anybody should be able to express anything, any kind of gender. Because if we restrict gender box today, like how they restricted the gender box to binary, then tomorrow there will be multiple more expressions that we might not be aware of, and somebody comes saying you have excluded me, then how is it possible? Regarding the issues of aromantic person, asexual people, we do in our crisis intervention, one thing that we constantly face and we address is the forced heterosexual marriage or forced partnerships, sexual partnerships with such people. And we definitely handle those cases, we talk about it and all that. So I was mainly talking in terms of basically binary system which needs to break open. So that's why probably I didn't touch upon it.
Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah.
It's actually a question to Nalini Chetty. And it's about the welfare schemes, implemented by the government, Kerala government.
മലയാളത്തിൽ ചോദിച്ചോളൂ, ഞാൻ ട്രാൻസ്ലേറ്റ് ചെയ്തു.
നമ്മളിപ്പം നമ്മുടെ LGBT സമൂഹത്തിനാണെങ്കിലും മറ്റുള്ള ഇപ്പം LGBT ഒക്കെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്ന സമൂഹമാണെങ്കിൽ പോലും സെക്സ് വർക്കേഴ്സ് എന്ന രീതിയിലുള്ള സമൂഹത്തിനാണെങ്കിലും ഗവൺമെന്റ് നടപ്പിലാക്കുന്ന സ്കീംസ് ഒക്കെ തന്നെ വെൽഫെയർ സ്കീംസ് എന്ന രീതിയിൽ മാത്രം ഓറിയന്റേഷൻ മാത്രം നിന്ന് പോകുന്നുണ്ട്. അതായത് അതൊരു നവോത്ഥാനം എന്ന നിലയിലേക്കോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എന്താ പറയാ ഈ സമൂഹത്തിന്റെ മുന്നേറ്റത്തിലേക്ക് കൊണ്ടുവരുന്ന രീതിയിലേക്കോ വരുന്നുണ്ടോ, അതോ വെൽഫെയർ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ആ ഒരു ഗവൺമെന്റിന്റെ ഒരു വെൽഫെയർ സ്റ്റേറ്റോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ രീതിയിലേക്ക് വരുന്ന ആ ഒരു ഓറിയന്റേഷൻ മാത്രം നിന്ന് പോകുന്നുണ്ടോ കേരളത്തിൽ നടപ്പിലാക്കുന്ന ഇത്തരം സമൂഹങ്ങൾക്കുള്ള പ്രോഗ്രാം എന്താണ് ആ ഒരു അറിയണമെന്ന് ആഗ്രഹം.
മാഷ ഒന്നും കൂടെ ഒന്ന് പിന്നെ ശരിക്കും ക്ലിയർ ആവുന്നില്ല.
കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ?
കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ട്, പക്ഷെ ശബ്ദം വ്യക്തമല്ല. അപ്പൊ ഒന്ന് ചുരുക്കിയൊരു ചോദ്യം ചോദിക്കാം. എന്താണ്
ചോദിച്ചതെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ നമ്മൾ ഗവൺമെന്റ് ധാരാളം പ്രോഗ്രാംസ് നടപ്പിലാക്കുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ. ഇപ്പം ഈ LGBT സമൂഹത്തിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ടും അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഈ സെക്സ് വർക്കേഴ്സിനൊക്കെ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് ചില സ്കീംസ് ഒക്കെ ഇടപെടുന്നതായിട്ടൊക്കെ കാണുന്നുണ്ട് സർക്കാരുകൾ. അപ്പൊ കേരളത്തില് ഈ ഒരു ഇടപെടലുകൾ ഒരു വെൽഫെയർ ഓറിയന്റേഷൻ എന്ന രീതിയിൽ മാത്രം നിന്ന് പോകുന്നുണ്ടെന്നാണ് ചോദ്യം.
അല്ല, അങ്ങനെ വലിയ ഇടപെടലുകൾ നടത്തേണ്ടെന്ന് പത്രമാധ്യമങ്ങളിലൊക്കെ ഒരുപാട് വായിക്കാന്നല്ലാണ്ട് വ്യക്തമായ ഒരു ഇടപെടലുകൾ ഒന്നുമില്ല. ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ തന്നെ സുരക്ഷ എന്നുള്ള പ്രോജക്റ്റ് HIV ബോധവൽക്കരണത്തിന്റെ പ്രോജക്റ്റാണ്. അതിൽ കുറച്ച് പേർക്ക് വർക്ക് കൊടുത്തു, അവർ ആ വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അപ്പൊ അത് ആരോഗ്യ പ്രശ്നമായിട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്ന, അല്ലാണ്ട് സെക്സ് വർക്കറുടെ പ്രശ്നമല്ല. സെക്സ് വർക്കറിൽ നിന്ന് മറ്റുള്ളവർക്ക് വല്ല രോഗം വരാതിരിക്കണം എന്ന് മാത്രമാണ് അവർ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നുള്ളൂ. അല്ലാണ്ട് മറ്റേ ക്ലയന്റിൽ നിന്ന് സെക്സ് വർക്കർക്ക് വരുന്നുള്ള കാര്യത്തിൽ പോലും അവർക്ക് ചിന്ത വരുന്നില്ല ഒരു വിഷയം. ഇപ്പൊ ഈ അടുത്ത കാലത്ത് റേഷൻ കാർഡ് വിതരണം ചെയ്യുന്നു പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് റേഷൻ കാർഡ് വിതരണം ചെയ്യാന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് വന്നപ്പോ അവര് പറയുന്നത് എന്താ വെച്ചാൽ കൃത്യമായ അഡ്രസ് ഉള്ളവർക്ക് റേഷൻ കാർഡ് കൊടുക്കാന്ന്. കൃത്യമായ അഡ്രസ് ഉള്ളവർക്ക് എല്ലാ സ്ഥലങ്ങളിലും റേഷൻ കാർഡ് കിട്ടും. അപ്പോ ഈ സുരക്ഷയുടെ പ്രോജക്റ്റിന്റെ കീഴിൽ കൊടുക്കാന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് അതിനെ അവര് പറയണ ഇത്ര പേരെ കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ പാടുള്ളൂ, ഇങ്ങനെ കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ പാടുള്ളൂ. അതായത് ഈ നെല്ലും ബദരൊക്കെ മാറ്റി കഴിയുമ്പോ ബദര് കൂടുതൽ നെല്ല് കുറവെന്നുള്ള അവസ്ഥ തന്നെയാണ് അത്. പക്ഷെ എല്ലാം പറയുമ്പോ ഒരുപാട് കാര്യങ്ങൾ പറയുന്നുണ്ട്. സെക്സ് വർക്കറാന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ലോൺ കിട്ടുന്നു പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് സെക്സ് വർക്കറിന് എഴുതാന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഒരു ഇത് കോഴിക്കോടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. പക്ഷെ സെക്സ് വർക്കറാന്ന് എഴുതിയപ്പോ അവര് പരിഗണിച്ചിട്ടില്ല. അതേപോലെ തന്നെയാണ് റേഷൻ കാർഡിന്റെ പ്രശ്നം. അതേപോലെ ഇപ്പൊ കോവിഡ് കാലത്ത് എല്ലാവർക്കും ഉള്ള പ്രശ്നം പോലെ സെക്സ് വർക്കർക്ക് ജോലിയില്ലായ്മയും പ്രശ്നം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. കിറ്റ് വിതരണത്തിന്റെ കാര്യം വന്നപ്പോ സാമൂഹ്യ പ്രവർത്തകർ അവിടേക്ക് കടന്നു വന്നിട്ടില്ല, ഗവൺമെന്റും വന്നിട്ടില്ല. അപ്പൊ അതിനൊരു മാറ്റം എന്ന് പറയാൻ പറ്റില്ല. മാറ്റം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ പത്രമാധ്യമങ്ങളിൽ കൂടിയുള്ള മാറ്റം, അത് മാത്രമാണ് സംഭവിച്ചിട്ടുള്ളത്.
Yeah, I guess Karthika has a question.
ഹലോ മാം, എനിക്ക് നളിനി ചേച്ചിയോടാണ് ഒരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ചോദിക്കാനുള്ളത്. നമ്മുടെ ഫിലിംസിൽ എക്സിസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ജെൻഡർ പൊളിറ്റിക്സിനെ കുറിച്ച് പറയാമോ? ഇപ്പോ പല റെപ്രസെന്റേഷൻ മാം പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ ലിറ്ററേച്ചറിലാണെങ്കിലും സാഹിത്യത്തിലാണെങ്കിലും എഴുത്തിലൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് ഒത്തിരി മാറ്റങ്ങൾ കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ സാധിക്കും, ഒരുപാട് പേരിലേക്ക് എത്തിക്കാൻ സാധിക്കും. പക്ഷെ മാമിന് തോന്നുന്നുണ്ടോ കൈൻഡ് ഓഫ് കറക്റ്റ് ഒരു റെപ്രസെന്റേഷൻ ആണ് നമ്മുടെ ഫിലിം ഇൻഡസ്ട്രിയിലാണെങ്കിലും എഴുത്തുകളിൽ സംഭവിക്കുന്നതെന്ന് തോന്നിയിട്ടുണ്ടോ? അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ജെൻഡർ പൊളിറ്റിക്സ് ഫിലിം ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീനെ കുറിച്ച് സംസാരിക്കാമോ നന്ദി ചേച്ചി? താങ്ക് യു.
തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും ഞാൻ അവിടെ അവസ്ഥ ഏരിയയായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട ഒരാൾ എന്നുള്ള നിലയ്ക്ക് ഇപ്പം ഫിലിം ഇൻഡസ്ട്രിയിൽ കുറച്ച് ആൾക്കാര് പ്രത്യക്ഷത്തിൽ വെളിയിൽ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിലും അവർക്ക് അവരുടേതായ ഒരു ഐഡന്റിറ്റി കൂടെ ഇന്ന സിനിമയാണ് എടുക്കേണ്ടത്, ഇന്നതാണ് സമൂഹത്തിനെ കാണിക്കേണ്ടത് എന്ന് വരുമ്പോ പ്രത്യേകിച്ചും ആൺ സമൂഹത്തിനും കൂടെ യോജിക്കുന്ന ഒരു സിനിമയല്ലാണ്ട് പെണ്ണിന്റെ പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ അവതരിപ്പിക്കുന്ന അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പെണ്ണിന് എന്ത് വേണമെന്ന് പറയുന്ന അത്തരം സിനിമകളൊന്നും വലിയ കാര്യമായിട്ട് മുന്നോട്ട് വന്നിട്ടില്ല. സിനിമ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്, പക്ഷെ അതിന് പ്രേക്ഷകരുടെ എണ്ണത്തിൽ കുറവാണ്. അതായത് എപ്പോഴും ആണിനെ ഹൈലൈറ്റ് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ട് എന്ത് പ്രവർത്തിച്ചാലും മാത്രമേ നിലനിൽക്കാൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ എന്നൊരു പ്രശ്നം വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പൊ സ്ത്രീകളുടെ സംഘടന ഉണ്ടാക്കിയപ്പോൾ ആ സംഘടനയിലും അതേ പ്രശ്നമുണ്ട്. തന്നെയല്ല അവര് പ്രത്യക്ഷത്തില് പെണ്ണിനൊന്നും ചെയ്യുന്നില്ല എന്ന് ഫിലിം ഇൻഡസ്ട്രി കാണിക്കുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിലും അവരെന്ത് ചെയ്യുന്ന വെച്ചാല് പ്രധാന റോളുകളിലൊന്നും സംഘടനാപരമായിട്ട് ഉള്ള സ്ഥലങ്ങളിൽ ഇരുത്താതിരിക്കുക, ഇപ്പൊ അമ്മ പോലെയുള്ള സംഘടനകൾ ഇരുത്താതിരിക്കുക, സംവിധാനങ്ങൾ ചെയ്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ തിയേറ്ററുകൾ അത് വേണ്ടത്ര പരിഗണന കൊടുക്കാതിരിക്കുക, ആ രീതിയിലുള്ള അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സിനിമയിൽ വരുമ്പോ തന്നെ പെണ്ണ് പറയാൻ പറ്റാവുന്ന തെറി, ആണ് പറയാൻ പറ്റാവുന്ന തെറി, അങ്ങനെ അപ്പോഴും അവിടെയൊക്കെ വിവേചനം ഇപ്പോഴും നിലനിൽക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. ഒരു ചെറിയ മുന്നേറ്റം വന്നിട്ടുണ്ടെന്ന് മാത്രമേ ഉള്ളൂ. അതെനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നത് ചെറിയ മുന്നേറ്റം. ഇപ്പൊ ഒരു അവാർഡിന്റെ കാര്യത്തിൽ ഒരു പ്രത്യേകത കണ്ടത്, ഞങ്ങള് 2-3 പേർക്ക് അവാർഡ്, സ്പെഷ്യൽ ജൂറി അവാർഡ് തന്നു. അപ്പൊ പോലെ അവര് പറഞ്ഞത് എന്താണെന്നറിയോ, ഒരു പ്രത്യേക വിഭാഗത്തിൽപ്പെട്ട സ്ത്രീകൾക്ക് വേണ്ടി സ്പെഷ്യൽ ജൂറി അവാർഡ്. എന്താണ് ഈ പ്രത്യേക വിഭാഗം? ഞാൻ സാധാരണ സ്ത്രീയാണ്, അല്ലാണ്ട് സ്ത്രീയിൽ നിന്നൊരു പ്രത്യേക വിഭാഗമേ അല്ല. അതുപോലെ തന്നെയാണ് ഇപ്പം നമ്മൾ ആദിവാസിയിൽ നിന്നൊരു ലേഡി ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, അവരെന്താ പ്രത്യേക വിഭാഗം? മനുഷ്യ വിഭാഗം എന്ന് മാത്രമേ അതിന് കാണാൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ. അപ്പൊ അതിനു കൂടെ പറഞ്ഞതാണ് നളിനി ജമീലയ്ക്ക് കൊടുക്കുന്നു ഒരു പ്രത്യേക വിഭാഗത്തിൽ നിന്ന് പെട്ടത് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ ഈ അവസ്ഥ എനിക്ക് വലിയ മാറ്റമൊന്നും സംഭവിച്ചിട്ടില്ല ഇവിടെ. ഓക്കെ,
വേറെ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് ഉണ്ടോ? എനിക്കൊന്ന് റൂമിയോട് ചോദിച്ചൊരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ അത് ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സിൽ ആൻസർ ചെയ്തെന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു. ഡു യു വാണ്ട് ടു സ്പീക്ക് ഹിയർ?
I answered in the chat box.
Then that is ended.
Do you want me to say it?
After that,
Yeah, if you can speak about it, I think it's going to go.
Oh no, nothing. So basically, I started training Hindustani classical music from the age of 6, and then I was groomed in a very traditional environment. To even think about my sexual desire and to talk about it had no issues. നീ അവിടെ പോ. എനിക്ക് അതേ പ്രശ്നം. Sorry. So and then it is ending. Few minutes. The thing is that what I could do as a first step was to avoid marriage because I knew I was queer. I didn't have the word. But then this thing that was hammered into my head to live as a musician for the lifetime, I had to disconnect myself from that to be able to assert my very dear trans or queer identity. Starting from wearing saris to the concerts, to change those dresses and then make gender neutral expressions and all that. So it was a big issue. I mean, the image of being a musician is quite heavy burden. I hope I've answered.
Yeah, thank you. So do you have further questions? We are exceeding the time limits.
So if you don't have further questions, I think we can conclude. Reshma ma'am.
Okay, fine. We can always continue the discussion later on. Now I
Okay.
So no, your voice is very feeble.
Yeah, it's over.
it's okay, Divya.
Okay, so let's conclude the session. I guess we have further sessions now. So thank you so much for the speakers to speak on the topic of politics of identity and sexuality. So we had Tadaus Alfonso. He spoke on the idea of even citizenship, not just limiting to the idea of feminist discourse and the issues of mental health. Then we come to the next speaker, Rumi Harish. She was trying to problematize the idea of the binary nature of gender, then the heterosexual normativity, and was also very vocal about the issues which is inside, the marginality uh, and also the intersectionality which is happening, and and she also spoke about a lot of areas. Then we come to the third speaker, Nalini Jamila. She was maybe not just as a writer. I think it was also kind of she was basically questioning the consciousness of the Kerala society through her writings and through her the nature of politics. She was speaking and she was living. And thank you everyone for coming and speaking to the students and to the participants of the webinar. And on behalf of the social work department, I once again thank you.
Thank you, Divya ma'am. Now we had a illuminating session, wonderful discussion we had. So I would like to invite Amrita to deliver the word of thanks.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Amrita.
Yes. Okay. First of all, a warm good morning to all present here. Today, as we all know, it is the third day of our international webinar Aloft on dislocation and fragmented identities, and it is our first panel discussion which is on the topic politics of identity, gender and sexuality. We are living in a world in the middle of pandemic with a crisis on social thought process. Concept of identity, gender and sexuality differs from individual to individual. Most of the people develop their opinion about this on the basis of so-called traditional concept, and they doesn't even bother to come out of that cage. And I'm sure that from this session, we got a fire to rethink and redefine our own politics on gender, identity, and sexuality. I would like to express my gratitude to all esteemed delegates whose participation and contribution which made this session a huge success. First of all, I express my sincere gratitude to our panel members, Dr. Tadaus Alfonso, Assistant Professor Psychology in Christ University, Bangalore, and Ms. Nalini Jamila, activist, author, and recipient of Kerala State Film Award 2021, and Ms. Romi Harish, author, transgender activist, theatre person, and Hindustani musician, who had taken time from their busy schedule to make our session effective. Next, I would like to thank Ms. Divya, Assistant Professor of Social Work Department, Regional Center, Tirur, for moderating this session. Then we must thank our teacher in charge, Fatima PS, and student in charge, Kesia. I also must mention our appreciation to all of the faculty members, students, and other participants who actively participated in the session. Once again, thank you all. Have a great time.
So thank you all for attending. It was a pleasure to have you all with us. So we hope you have enjoyed this session and all are welcome for the upcoming session of Aloft. Thank you. Thank you so much.